Shavua Tov.
So, I know I'm asking a very general question. I'm sure it's very specific. So, should we be trying to go to Eretz Yisrael now?
Is America right now in a repeat of pre-Holocaust Nazi Germany? Check out this clip over here with Yaakov Linger and the Rosh Hashiva Rabbi Feinstein. We'll watch this clip together and then talk about it. But first, hit the subscribe button in the corner. We'd love to keep this conversation going.
But Lemaisa, now that we have that title, we have all those things, now we're facing the enemies that are trying to wipe out the whole nation, wherever it is. And in a way, Hitler may have wanted to do it too, but no one really had any doubts he couldn't do America. But now, I wouldn't put America too much. And then I think that whatever's going to happen, America's in the next place. Because the only big kvitza of Jews in the world, chutz for Eretz Yisrael, is America. When the state was made in 1948, there was not even 1 million Jews there. Now there's 10 million Jews, and there's 8 million Jews there. But the state is over 10 million people. The state was there not even make 1 million at that time, even with the Arabs didn't make 1 million. So I'm saying, so all of a sudden, we are the Jews. The Jews were absorbed into Eretz Yisrael. There are no Jews in Africa anymore, no Jews in Asia anymore. You'll have a little bit. How many do you think there are in Australia? 85,000. Go to Europe. The biggest is France, and they're leaving there too, right? Because of the anti-Semitism there. England is tremendously anti-Semitic at the moment. So where are we going to stay? Canada is. You come to the United States, we're things that. So obviously God's making kibbutz goliaths by making us go slowly but surely into Eretz Yisrael. So we're going to be there. So we're going. So what's going to make us go? We're the less ones. I have no idea, but something's going to happen. Whether it's going to be by good or bad, that I can't answer you. But we'll find out.
So, Rabbi Wander, you heard that message from Rav Reuven Feinstein. What's your response?
So first of all, Rav Reuven, I want to wish him a refuah shlema b'soch shar chol Yisrael. He's hospitalized now, and we wish him only bracha and atzlacha. He's one of the few that has the courage to get up and say it as it is. There are unfortunately so few Rabbanim in America that are willing to publicly state what Rav Reuven just said, which is that the Jews, it's time for the Jews to realize that America is not their home, and that in the near future, we're going to see a great transition. However that's going to play out, there's going to be a great transition.
Yeah, it definitely feels the way the Rosh Hashiva is saying. And I just wanted to analyze a few things that were here because there was a lot to unpack. I think that there were a couple messages over here. Number one, that the Kibbutz Galus already started. Now, and that's very important. He's saying that the Jews are not scattered. It's not scattered around the world. So he's saying that what we've been saying all along is correct, that the Jews have returned. And for the most part, the biggest pocket of Jews is left in America because the Jews have already returned. And I live in Ramat Beit Shemesh. Everywhere I go is people from France. I have neighbors from Ukraine, from Ethiopia, from Russia, from Romania, from South Africa, from Australia. I have all of those people are on my block. And the Jews are coming back to Eretz Yisrael. And what's important about that message is that the Rosh Hashiva, she should be well, is pointing out that the Geula has started. I don't know if I'm putting words in his mouth. Is that what you heard?
I don't think you are. I think that, and not only that, I would go a step further and say that he is not changing the shita of his father. Rav Moshe also, if you notice in his tshuva, does not take the simple road out. Right? He could just say, we paskin like the Rambam. There's no mitzvah today to live in Eretz Yisrael.
Like the Ramban,
he says,
yes.
we paskin like the Ramban. He says, there's a mitzvah today to live in Eretz Yisrael. So listen, it's clear from the Feinstein family that they understand already that there is a mitzvah today to live in Eretz Yisrael. Right? That is undisputed. And world events are becoming clearer and clearer by the day that kibbutz galios is happening. Just like Rav Ruven mentioned, if you look at a globe today, you look at a world map, you will see that all of the giant communities, Jewish communities across the globe, have shrunk to the point where they're almost negligible. Where are the Jews of Taiman? Where are the Jews of Morocco? Where are the Jews of Egypt? Where are the Jews of Algeria? Where
Of
are the Jews
Austria.
of Europe? Exactly. Where are the Jews of Europe? Where they're not there anymore. Their numbers are just are so small, and they're getting smaller each day.
A lot of the comments that I get, actually, it's very interesting. The comments we got. There are thousands of comments, so there's a lot of real data that I could look at and really hear what people are saying. A few people wrote, "I bought a one-way ticket," and I believe them. Some people wrote they renewed their passport. Some people wrote that, and then there was some people say, "I wish I could come, but I financially cannot come, or I'm tied to something." So maybe you could tell me, what do you tell a person who can't come?
The best way to come to Eretz Yisrael is not because you're being pushed out of another nation, that you're being thrown out, that you're running away from something. The best way to come to Eretz Yisrael is because you feel the necessity, you understand the importance to come to Eretz Yisrael, and it becomes obvious that this is the place that a Jew needs to be. This is the Ratzon Hashem to be in Eretz Yisrael, and to come here for positive reasons. Unfortunately, the vast majority of Jews that are in the land of Israel today are here because they were persecuted. They were running away from something. And perhaps that's the Nakuda, that's exactly the point as to why this Golos is different than other Golios. It's very easy to meaning it's obvious when you have to run away from somewhere, you need a place to go, and there's a refuge here in the land of Israel for the Jewish people. It's an obvious choice to make. But when you're comfortable, right? I always say the worst Golos is the one you don't realize you're in. And when you're comfortable and you don't even realize you're in Golos, then it becomes a whole different story. Then it's not a matter of feeling that you need to run away or that you're persecuted, although that is also happening. But it's a question of basic understanding and knowledge about the Torah and what the Ribono Shalom wants from each and every one of us.
What can we tell people who can't do it?
It's a difficult question, and I believe that the Ribono Shalom is only as meitiv. He wants to do good for the Jewish people, and if he has put somebody in a certain circumstance in which they're not able, physically not able to, psychologically not able to, whatever the case may be, then perhaps he has a tafkid. He has a certain important mission that he has to do where he is at. The Ribono Shalom, nothing happens by happenstance. If a person is stuck in a certain place, then he has to ask themselves, why is he stuck in this place? Is it because, of course, we say, maybe it's because of our sins. Maybe we have to do tshuva. That's obvious should be obvious to everybody. But even if someone is a tzaddik gomer, and he's stuck for some reason in Chutz La'aretz, then perhaps the Ribono Shalom has chosen that person to do a specific mission that he has to accomplish there. It should be an ambassador at the same time for Eretz Yisrael, right? He could be the one that is the conduit in order to convince other people that they have to start moving and they have to start getting up and changing their ways. So again, I don't claim to know what the Ribono Shalom's ways are. Obviously, each person has to judge individually, and I just want to make it clear that we're talking about a very small subsection of the people. I don't think the vast majority of Jews are physically not able to leave, or are in a case of pikuach nefesh, like we quoted the podcast the other day of somebody whose son who is lo aleinu has cancer and is stuck in a hospital there. Right, we're talking about a very small percentage of the Jewish people. The majority of Jewish people are capable of coming. They will have to be downgraded, meaning when they come, it's not going to be as easy in Gashmias as it was perhaps for them in Chutz La'aretz.
The Yerushalmi in Yuma everybody quotes the Gemara that says, the Talmud Bavli, that says that the second Beis Hamikdash, even though we had Torah, Gemilas Chasadim, we had mitzvos, people were learning all day and night, and we had kolos, we had whatever it was back in the day. But it says Afalpi that they had all the Torah and the mitzvos. That wasn't the problem. The problem was sinas chinam. But that's the Bavli. So what does the Yerushalmi say? The Yerushalmi came 300 years before the Bavli. Well, my Rosh Hashiva, Rav Asher Rubenstein, says, the Bavli says, Sha'ahovu es mamoinam, v'sonu ish esreyeyu sinas chinam. That the root cause of it was a love of money. He would say that, and this may sound like it could be pretty tough. It's a tough thing to say, I'll admit, because everybody likes money. Everybody no person doesn't like, and money is useful. It gives comfort in life. People have money, have security. People who say that, money isn't everything, don't have any money, but it does help. But my Rebbe would say, Rav Asher Rubenstein would say that when after Kriyas Yamsuf, there was all the money of Mitzrayim on the seashore, and Moshe Rabbeinu had to pull the Jews out of there to take them to Eretz Yisrael. They said, come, and they were collecting money, and he was telling them, let's go to Eretz Yisrael. The women, on the other hand, Vatana Miriam, Ashir al Hashem, she said Ashir al Hashem, and she said, Sus v'rochwe roma bayom. She talked about that the sus was thrown up into the heaven out of the sea. But the men looked at the money that fell on the seashore.
It's a Beferish Pasuk and Rashi. It speaks about Lot, that Lot was told by the Malach that that Sodom is about to be annihilated. It's about to be wiped out. And the Torah uses the word mismameh with a shalshela, something that's very, very unusual in the Torah. And Rashi asked the obvious question. You know that your city is about to be torn apart and about to be destroyed. Why would you delay? What is causing this delay? And he says, Lot delayed because of his mammon, because he was afraid to leave back his Gashmias behind. So he delayed even though he knew that his city and his life was imploding right before his eyes.
Now that we're on Drash and you mentioned Lot, so Lot's wife, I thought of this, I didn't see it anywhere, but if Lot's wife didn't turn around, we wouldn't have David HaMelech. Because of that, that's where Ammon and Moab came from. If she was around, that never would have happened. And
it would have happened in a different way.
It would have happened in a different way. And I noticed the Ramban on the introduction to Shmos, he surprisingly says that the end of the Geula happens when we receive the Torah. And that happens in Chutz La'aretz. It doesn't happen in Eretz Yisrael. And Chazal tell us that Tamidei Chachamim banu yoser b'churbono yoser mi b'binyanoi. That we have more Torah came out of Golos. That Golos serves a purpose, and the Torah was given in the Midbar, was given in the darkest place. And we have a choice. We need to have this choice to come to Eretz Yisrael. And one of the things that I would like to improve on is, and my own personal thing, is speaking about the positive aspects of Eretz Yisrael with the concept of, I guess, attraction and less promotion, because like Rav Lev said, Tamu Ru'u, taste it. You need to be here and taste it. You're tasting it like nobody else. You and my dad both live on two sides of two hills, and tell us about what it's like to live on, near the oldest cemetery in the world. You got the, I guess, front row box seats, as they say. And so last video we wanted to talk a little bit about the Beis Hamikdash. We wanted to talk about, before this conversation right now, I was having an email with somebody in America who was quoting the Yoel Moshe, was trying to understand the Shitas of Rishonim of the Beis Hamikdash being built. So maybe give us a little background on what you can tell us about the Beis Hamikdash, where it's going to be, when it's going to be built, who's going to build it. Give us your ideas on these three questions. Thank you.
So first of all, I think that I'm often get the feedback that I shouldn't be so negative. I talk about how things are collapsing, that the Gullus is closing before our eyes, and Jews have to escape. And I believe that's correct. but I shouldn't be so negative. I should give the positive reasons why you should come. That's when I agree that we should, again, preferably come for the positive reasons. But the positive reasons have been here for many, many decades, and the Jews still haven't come. So I think it's a mixture, in this case, of a carrot and a stick. That on one hand, we need to...
We say, Mashcheni acharecha v'narutza.
We need, on one hand, we need to have people that are learning and understanding the chashivas of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. On the other hand, we also need to, unfortunately, we need to have a push, and that push is happening when the goyim are showing the Jews. It's a fascinating thing that since October 7th, there has been a identity crisis amongst Jews in America. And I'm not talking about even the frum world, the Orthodox world. I'm talking about throughout the Jewish world. Many Jews woke up on October 7th, October 8th, and they realized that as connected or as unaffiliated as they are with their Jewish roots, they're still going to be targeted as Jews. The former member of Knesset, Dov Lipman, who's in your town, so he told me that there is a class, a course that is given every year in North America. And that course, it is on the fundamentals of Zionism, and it usually has an attendance of about 100, 150 people. Since October 7th, right after October 7th, they had 9,000 applications to this course because people woke up and they realized that there's something going on here. It reminds me of an article that was written by, I don't remember who it was written by. It was a woman that was working at one of the college campuses. She was Jewish, but she didn't practice at all her Judaism. She didn't recognize herself even as being Jewish. And she said she's walking through the halls of her college campus after October 7th, and people were turning around and they're looking at her and pointing at her and whispering. And she wrote the article. It was entitled, "Am I the only one who doesn't know this secret?" All the non-Jews understand that she's Jewish, but she herself doesn't understand that she's Jewish. So this has created a whole cascading effect on the identity crisis of Jews in America and around the world, to start to understand and to recognize that they are Jewish, and they need to, and that comes with certain responsibilities that they have to and a lot of learning. Now, the question as to whether, where I live, I live in the oldest and one of the largest Jewish cemeteries in the world. And I always tell people that come, I like to say over from Rabbi Aliyah Goldwicht. So he told me once that you can drive into a cemetery in a Rolls Royce, and you could be wearing a $10,000 Armani suit, and you could have a $50,000 Rolex on your wrist. He says, none of that do you have to cover up. The halacha is that your tzitzis are loig l'rosh, right? That you not allowed to make fun of the dead people. So you have to tuck in, you have to cover up your tzitzis. He says the Mason, they don't care. The dead people, they don't care about all of your materialism, all of your gashmias. All they care about is your mitzvos. And that's a lesson that we on one hand, we look out on one side of us and we see this huge cemetery. There are halachas, there's a minhagim to go on certain times of the year to a cemetery. And the idea is that you should remember that there's an end to us, right? We're not immortal, and we have an end, and there's a purpose to our lives, and we have to make the most of it. And then I turn to the other side of my house, and I see the Mokom HaMikdash. I always tell people when they ask about the dangers of where I live, I always tell them, I don't know what you see when you open up your window in the morning, but I have a beautiful view of the Temple Mount in front of my eyes. We feel very privileged to live in such a special place, in such a special time. So we have these two things that are always hitting us from both sides. On one hand, we have Mora Mikdash, we have the Mikdash that right in front of us. On the other hand, we have also this huge cemetery that surrounds us. And of course, we have a very large temporary Arab population around us. As Jews move from America, they move out. It's part of the transfer of populations agreement we have with them. We're just waiting for the Jews of America to replace them. And some people think I'm being facetious when I say that, but when I came to Israel 40 years ago, there were no living Jews on the Mount of Olives. Today on Har Hazeisim, we have 5 thriving Jewish communities. I live in the largest with about 1,000 Jews. So again, we're watching this transfer of population happen before our eyes. And again, that gets back to what we were talking about before about the kibbutz galios. As there's a kibbutz galios, we see, and it's a very interesting thing I should mention, that the Arabs understand something very interesting. They understand when Jews are acting Jewish, they back off. When Jews try to hide the fact that they're Jewish, and this is general in the world, it's not only with the Arabs. Perhaps this is the role of the non-Jew. When Jews try to hide the fact that they're Jewish, when they try to become just one of the nations, that is when they get the most pushback. That is when the most anti-Semitism comes out. It's when Jews are acting like proud Jews that they understand that it's time for us to back away. And we see this all over the place. I see it daily around where I live. It happens on the Har HaBayis every day. A couple years ago, Jews that were ascending to the mount, they would be attacked on a daily basis. There were Arabs that were going there and they were screaming Allahu Akbar, and they would surround them with the threat of riots. And that is at a time when if a Jew were to open his mouth, if he were to move his lips, looking like he's praying, he would immediately be arrested and whisked off the mountain. Today, we're living in a totally different reality. And that reality is that the Jews are openly praying. And we have daily minyanim for Shachris, for Mincha in the morning and the afternoon, with Birkas Kohanim, with Tishtachavaya, Pishut Yadayim Reglayim. There's a kollel that learns there. There's a yeshiva that learns there every day. A completely different reality. And the Arabs have literally disappeared. It's unbelievable. You cannot see an Arab when Jews go up. And that's because when Jews are acting proud and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, the non-Jews understand that it's leave them alone. They're doing what they're supposed. They're doing their task. In fact, I always tell people the Arabs are doing exactly what I expect from them. It's the Jews that are not doing what I expect from them. Rav Dov Lior is the chief rabbi of Kiryat Arba Hebron. He recently retired and moved here to the Mount of Olives, to one of the neighborhoods here, Bir Torot. And he's fond of saying that in English, when you want to describe something, so you describe it first with the adjective, and then you use the noun. So if you want to describe that a table is white, in English you say a white table. The same thing in Yiddish, you say a weiße Tisch. In Hebrew, in Lashon HaKodesh, it's the opposite, right? First you say shulchan, and then you say levan. First you say the ikar, the main point, and then you use the descriptive afterwards. So he says when the Torah describes Ishmael as being pera Adam, it doesn't make sense. It should be Adam pera, according to the rules of diktuk, of Lashon HaKodesh. So he says what this comes to tell us is that Bnei Yishmael, their ikar is that they're pera, they're wild. It happens to be they're also Adam. It happens to be they're also humans. But the point is that they are a wild nation. And that is their ikar. So my expectations for the Arabs here are not very high. My expectations for the Jewish nation is extremely high. And that's why it's so disappointing to see that half of the Jewish people are choosing to remain in a self-imposed exile.
But, okay. So, first of all, there's a lot to unpack.
I don't know if I answered all 3 of your questions. I'm sorry.
Well, I asked specifically about Har HaBayis, because we did talk about previously about why people who can't afford to come, what should they be doing? And then we went into discussing motivation, or like how important is this? What's going on? And I think like we both agree that these types of ideas really have to come from the person. We discussed how having financial issues with the whole Aliyah could definitely be a challenge, and it has always eternally been a challenge for the Jews, whether to seek spirituality, which is the currency of Israel, or Gashmius, which is Chutz La'aretz, and that would really led us to discussing the situation with the Arabs who need to respect the Jews. And I heard a famous rabbi said, either make kiddush or they're going to make havdalah. And it's and Judaism is about boundaries and borders, and borders is a central theme in Judaism, defining things what it is, and that really is called, when we make din lemata, then there's rachamim lamala. When we call things for what they are, when we say the truth, emet, that actually is moshech rachamim. It brings down mercy from God, because if we don't call things what they are, then in Shemayim they call things what they are. So there's this opposite relationship that we have with Shemayim. I saw the Chassam Sofer says, I heard this b'shem Moshe Wolfson. I saw him say it. He says the Chassam Sofer says that in Chutz La'aretz, the dirt of Eretz Yisrael is more kadosh than the Shemayim in Chutz La'aretz. What does this mean? He says that if you're in Chutz La'aretz, let's say you're in Lakewood, and you go up to Shemayim over there, and you see the Malchei Asharis singing Shira HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you're up there and you see what's going on, and you see this, witness this whole thing, and you come back down, and you're back in Lakewood, you probably will never forget that for the rest of your life. So Rav Moshe Wolfson said, he said this 6 years ago, he says the dirt in Eretz Yisrael is holier than that whole experience you had there. So, you get to experience this, you get to see the dirt, it's the kisavoyu. I have 250 esrogim growing in my garden. Someone asked me why. So I said, V'haya kisavoyu ela oretz v'natatem. That's what we're supposed to do. It's not all about one element of Eretz Yisrael. There's many elements of Eretz Yisrael. There's all the Shvatim, and they lived in different places. It says that Shlomo HaMelech knew every place in Eretz Yisrael where it produced peppers, and then he went to that fountain, and he was able to affect the whole world through Eretz Yisrael, because Eretz Yisrael really is the Bechor of all nations. It's the source of all sustenance. That's why whenever you are in Chutz La'aretz, you face Eretz Yisrael. And
we did the same thing, by the way. We purchased right away when we came. We purchased a plot of land in the north that was agricultural land, in order to be able to be yotza all the mitzvahs atluyas ba'aretz that are involved in agriculture. And it's interesting that there's a famous story in the Gemara about Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. It's a famous story that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, there was a Gentile that was bragging that he would come every year to the Beis Hamikdash on Pesach, and he would partake of the Korban Pesach, which is not permitted for Gentiles to do, of the Paschal sacrifice. And there's a famous story. So he was bragging to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira that I go every year and I partake of the Korban Pesach. I dress up, I disguise myself as a Jew, and I partake. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says, did they give you a part of the Aliyah, the tail of the fatty tail of the animal, of the sheep? And he says, no, they never gave me the Aliyah. Now, every Jewish child at the time at least, knew that you do not partake of the Aliyah. That is something that's put on the Mizbeach of the Korban Pesach, and that's not something that's eaten. So he said, next time you go to Jerusalem, make sure you get the best part, the fatty Aliyah, the tail. And he comes the next year to Jerusalem, and he tells them that he wants a piece of the Aliyah, and they immediately realize that he's an imposter, and they did what they did to him. So the question Tosfos asks over there is an interesting question. He says Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira lived far away, right? But you would assume that he would become, and he would be Ola L'Regel. So why did he have to come up with this whole plan in order to tell the non-Jew to go and request the Aliyah? Why didn't he, when he's Ola L'Regel, he should just point to the guy and say, that's the guy, the imposter, to take care of him. That's not what happened. He made up this whole. So why did have? So Tosfos says that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira lived in the far north, in Chutz La'aretz, and he wasn't Ola L'Regel. Why? Because he wasn't chayiv. This is the one position in Tosfos. He wasn't chayiv in Korban Pesach. Why not? Because he didn't own land in Eretz Yisrael. That the way that you're chayiv in Korban Pesach, according to that opinion, is that you have to own land in Eretz Yisrael. So that's also a madrega. I hear many times when I speak to Jews that, okay, we didn't make Aliyah yet, but we've purchased the home. We're on the way to purchasing home. That is also a level. I have to admit that I'd rather people just get up and move, but people that already realize that it's important. And we know, of course, of the famous news story that just broke about the apartments that the Syrian community have purchased here in Jerusalem.
Yeah,
they realize that they need a contingency plan, a plan B, just in case. That's also a madrega. That's also a level to understand that their time in Chutz La'aretz, their time in Gullus is also limited. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to get out the story.
No, there's no interruption. This is it's got to flow. We're getting there. We talked about the land. We talked about planting in Eretz Yisrael, and the mitzvahs of planting. They take the dirt. People take dirt from Eretz Yisrael to be buried and put it in the coffin in Chutz La'aretz.
Keeper ad Mosai.
Yeah. This week I opened up once again Yecheskel 36, 37, 38, 39. And you look at these psukim and you wonder, like, if everything that says over there has already happened exactly the way it says, just the way it says, we're going to come back. The land is going to start producing fruit. And this was the last thing. This was the last thing that the Rosh Hashiva said, was that after the Jews have come back and most of the Jews have returned and the Kibbutz Goliath is almost over, the last thing will have to happen will either be good or bad. And what I understood from him, he also said the word slowly. We slowly, and it's mamish kimo. That's the way it came. We slowly came. There was never a mass Aliyah from anywhere. It never happened. There was Jews from Ethiopia who came. There was Jews from Russia. That was a pretty mass Aliyah. But there wasn't a community that came out of love for Eretz Yisrael. There was always out of persecution. It was always there was no place to go, and they came to Eretz Yisrael. And the Rosh Hashiva is blessing us. He's hoping that we could all see what you and I, Rabbi, are speaking of, and understand, at least to look into it. I spoke to Moshe Lichtman, who is the author of Ema Bonim Smecha in English. He wrote it in 1999. He's currently in the United States. And in Mirz Hashem, in a week's time, we're going to have him on. And I want to talk to him about how those prophecies that were given or interpreted or written down in 1943 are coming and being fulfilled today. And the things that he said back then, right now the book is out of print. Maybe we'll do a pre-sale. We were talking about doing a pre-sale where we get maybe, a few hundred people together who commit to buying the book, and then we could run a printout and we could send it out to everybody. I think that would be...
I'm leaving tonight to Lakewood, and my suitcase is a whole case of the Sefer Ema Bottom Smith.
In Hebrew, though.
So in Hebrew.
Right. And which copy do you have? Because I have, let's see, I have the blue one, and I also have the red one.
That's the one.
This is the one. This is the one you got?
Yes.
So this,
yes.
Okay. So this
That's
one has
the one Rabbi Lichtman also recommends.
So this one has an advantage because it has the Marmar Komas on the bottom. But
right.
So,
but I can I just interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah, sure. We got 4 minutes.
You mentioned Yecheskel 36, and it's hard to mention that parak, that chapter, without also understanding what he says there is that the Jews that are living outside of the land are the biggest chilul Hashem. These are harsh words, but they're not my words. They're the Navi's words. Is the biggest chilul Hashem, the biggest desecration of God's name, that there are Jews, because the Goyim are going to say, what's this? These are God's people, and they're choosing not to live in God's land. It doesn't.
The Christians don't get it. The Christians don't get it. Tuvia Singer says this to me. He says, the whole world has figured out what's going on. That's why if I title this video, I title it, Mashiach is here, it'll get 1 million views. I'm not going to do it. But we'll try to get that message out, because the whole world...
I believe he is here, but that's
I know, but I'm saying,
discussion.
but whoa, okay, that's a whole different topic.
Oz Yoimru Vagoyim. Then first the Goyim are going to get it before we get it. That's the way it's
Vagoyim. So we have a minute.
But my point, I just want to tell you a quick...
Thank you for watching. This is the end of part 2. Part 3 is another hour of content. It'll be posted next week. Hit the subscribe button so we can stay in touch. If the bell notification is on, you'll get a notification about this video when it's published. It's about the third Beis Hamikdash. It's about the Har HaBayis. It's about a lot of topics that we haven't covered yet. So look out for that. And from just outside of Israel, Chazak v'amat, Shabbat Shalom. And we're waiting for you to come home. Good Shabbos.